Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Today's session, we're about to get started, and we're going to be discussing how collaboration is a force multiplier with our two guests today from Backbase and Sogeti. Let's move on. I am your host today. My name is Carmen Palomino Marced. As you can see from my profile picture, I need to have a new headshot taken, a bit of an old one. I am an enterprise account manager here at GitHub. I've been here for 6 years, and I will be your host. The way this is going to work is that we're going to have a really nice chat between the three of us, and then at the end we'll do a Q&A. During the chat, during the main session, please go ahead and write any questions that you have on our public chat. We've got John and Richard from GitHub going through the chat and making sure that if you've got any questions, they'll be answered or that they'll get brought up during our live session. And then at the end, if your interest has been piqued by what we've been talking about, we're going to share with you how you can request a demo with GitHub. So this is the agenda for today, what we're going to be talking about. There are three main topics. Topic number one is organizational efficiency and how how a company can leverage a platform to optimize the reusability of their previous work. Second topic is going to be about software delivery, how one can accelerate high quality software development and make sure it gets quicker to market. And then the third topic is going to be how to scale your business. So how to consolidate and scale as your teams and the requirements of the company grow. My first guest today is Eric from Backbase. And Eric, if you'd like now to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks Carmen, and thanks for having me today. So I think my hair does match my head picture, so I think that one still checks out at least. I'm Eric Nieuwenhuijsen. I'm a technical director at Backbase and specifically responsible for what we call the Backbase as a service discipline, which is our SaaS offering, and responsible for our system engineering discipline, which is either referred to as system engineering or as DevOps, basically taking care of the infrastructure and also the SDLC within Backbase. But you might be wondering, hey, what is Backbase? Because it might not be the best known brand, because we're often hidden behind the scenes. So Backbase is a vendor of what we call an engagement banking platform, really helping banks architect around the customer, allowing customer banks to really innovate like a neobank, where they don't renovate their entire core, but they attach the Backbase platform to it, giving their users the best possible experience all throughout the customer lifecycle. So you can think of somebody joining a bank remotely, so customer onboarding, but also servicing customers, all the way up to loyalty and upselling through, for example, loan origination. And we do that through all kinds of features, which are all shared in one platform. I think that's really the functional part of what Backbase does. But you might be wondering, hey, can we get some numbers on, hey, what do you do GitHub? What kind of, what do you see? So Backbase as an engineering organization has about 600 people or more than 600 people these days building the product. We do 1.5 million builds every year, and I think this is even outdated. It's even more these days. 3,000 releases a year. There's more than 100 teams working on it. So you can imagine we're quite a diverse company. Backbase is also located across the world, so we're really leveraging SaaS tools to effectively work together. And I think that's me and Backbase in a nutshell.
Thanks so much, Eric. And now I'd love to introduce our second guest, Clemens, CTO Cloud and DevOps at Sogeti. Over to you, Clemens.
Thank you, Carmen. And Eric, that's really impressive, all those numbers. So I'm the CTO for Cloud and DevOps of Sogeti. Sogeti is part of the larger group of Capgemini. And when you look what we are doing at Sogeti, we are a traditional system integrator, working together with our customers in helping them improving their delivery. We are present roughly in 100 locations around in 13 countries. At this moment, 17,000 people large. And what you see on the left side on this slide is we are helping our customers with DevOps. We are helping them with the adoption of cloud. We are helping them with leveraging the cloud capabilities the most and gaining that business value out of it. And actually, something where I'm quite proud of is we are sharing those practices, how we are working with those customers, with those enterprises, an enterprise like Eric just mentioned, all over the globe. We write papers around this. We do that together with Microsoft and GitHub. You see 3 papers in here. 2 of them are already downloadable. The last one we will share half of May. Then it will be available, and we will put the download link in the chat there. I think it's quite valuable. It's definitely around enterprise adoption of DevOps practices and the GitHub platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Clemens. Right. I think we are, if I'm not mistaken, it is time to get started. I'll start sharing again when we're ready for the Q&A from the public. But for now, it's time for the 3 of us to get going. And what best place to start? And it's going back to the past. I'd love to go back a few years ago when you were starting your DevOps transformation. So I'll start with you, Eric. How were the engineering teams organized, and how would you describe the ways they integrated and worked together?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Carmen. So I think DevOps transformation is always a big word, right? And a lot of people have different meanings to that. If I talk in the context of Backbase, I really talk about the journey from going from ISV, so independent software vendor, to becoming a SaaS company, which is one of the reasons we actually started with GitHub. So instead of just delivering software in an artifact repository where customers can download it and run it on premise, we actually started with our what we call the Backbase as a service offering, and really started organizing around that. So previously, people were really focused on just building their software, that being it. And now we've moved to the situation where people can actually become run responsible, where they are end-to-end responsible, building things, collaborating in a much more efficient way, simply because it's easier to share code. The pipelines are co-located, and previously that wasn't really the case, where we had disjunct solutions using an on-premise Git solution with a traditional CI attached to it. And in that sense, I think we really took leaps and made it better that way.
What about you, Clemens?
Yeah, and what Eric just mentioned, that they want to focus on that product, on the DevOps teams, which have end-to-end responsibility for one product or a service. That's definitely the goal of many organizations, what we are supporting around the globe. That's also what our teams are looking after, actually. Years ago, I think when Microsoft with their Team Foundation server also moved online to making it a SaaS product, we were definitely the first one who started to adopt that, because we don't want to lose resources in maintaining such an on-prem system, and really having them focus on DevOps tools, on creation of value there. That's how we started. We started first with starting to use TFS, then moved to TFS Online. I think it was called Visual Studio Online at that moment. Then later on, it went on to Azure DevOps. And now we are spreading actually to GitHub and the SaaS version of GitHub there. First, definitely with only the Git repos. But now GitHub Actions getting more mature and really rich on the capabilities. And I must say, our teams are loving it. Customers are really starting to adopt it there. And that's where the DevOps transformation starts, actually.
That's interesting you mentioned the SaaS part, by the way, because what I always love, and I keep saying this, I'm really lazy. I don't want to host these things myself. Just get somebody to do it so you can focus on business value. And I think that's where we really align in our visions, right? Yeah.
That's definitely, I always say, we developers are lazy by default. That's why we want to automate as much as possible. And you really want to have those DevOps teams focus on that product and service, and don't have to maintain everything around there, don't have to build stuff again and again and again, all those shared services that should be quite easily consumable for those teams. Focus on business value. That's the whole goal there. Yeah.
Focus on the USP of your company. Yeah.
So you're kind of going already into the next question, which is what made you go towards the change? You've talked about laziness, about automation, about making the developers actually work on the project they're meant to be working on rather than maintaining. Was there any other things that prompted the changes from an organization perspective?
Well, I think if we look at the bigger market, right, it's also the availability of these services right now. If you take a look at 5 to 10 years ago, the maturity wasn't there yet. It was more a niche market. There were some specific players. Where now you see, there's a lot more offerings available. So we try to stick with the time and go for it now that it's available, so we can really focus on what we should be focusing on. In the case of Backbase, providing banking software and not providing the best possible CI/CD solution, because that's where you have partners for.
Yeah, and then that's definitely what you see with many customers, what we are supporting there. One thing what we are using quite heavily is around GitHub is the idea around open source, but then mainly putting it also internally for Sogeti. We are 17,000 people large all over the globe. Our team members, they learn to use Git and GitHub on their schools. They are quite familiar with it. They are comfortable with it. So when we are leveraging and making this platform available for all our people, they are just happy with it. They want to have the best platform out there where they are used to, and they are comfortable with it. And because all those team members already have experience with open source on school, they do trainings on that, they do programs with it. We are leveraging that idea, that collaboration capability of GitHub to promote our inner source way of working. Sharing knowledge, sharing expertise, sharing automation, and sharing those reusable assets actually, and that's for us really important around there, and that's definitely where GitHub Enterprise brings that benefit there.
Nice. I think you're a step further in that journey already on the inner sourcing. It's really one of our goals for this year to get that up one notch, because in the end you don't want dependencies on other teams to develop something for you. You want to say, hey, if you're in a hurry, there's my repo, make a pull request, we'll review it and merge it in. And I think really, using the open source model, but then inside your company to make that possible.
Yeah. So powerful, so nice.
Yeah.
Carmen.
And when you transitioned to GitHub, were you measuring these goals that, for example, Clemens and Eric, you were just speaking about?
I'm doing it for inner source. I'm definitely doing it. We are also measuring how many pull requests, how many repos. We have we call it our GitHub program office. It's actually extracted from the open source program office, but we put it because we're also doing it for internal projects or for customer projects. We call it the GitHub program office. That's where we are measuring how actively it is used and also how they are using it. You can imagine we are hiring a lot of new people on a daily basis. We need to keep on training them. We need to make them aware, this is how you use Git, this is how you use GitHub. For example, don't put IP on public repos. It's so obvious, but it still happens sometimes. Don't put credentials on public repos. So that's where we are bringing that training in place. And just to scale out from there. That's the whole idea there. Yeah.
I think that's really the inner sourcing part. So for us, as we're just starting that, we're not really focused on measuring that yet. So what I really see on our side, we are on the operational excellence side of things, right? So how do we make sure that we don't spend operations resources on maintaining on-premise solutions? And what follows from that is what kind of cost optimizations can we get from switching to a managed service?
What kind of metrics are you using? What kind of metrics? I'm quite Interesting.
So cost is always a big one, and yeah, I mean, I'm mentioning it's the first one. It's of course one of the key drivers you do when selecting a solution like this, but also speed of onboarding. So how fast can people get started? How fast can we add capacity? In the end, that was something which often lacked when using on-premise solutions. If you have to add capacity manually, that's a problem. And right now, we don't even think about it anymore. And of course, yeah, availability. So yeah, how often you get downtime from developers not being able to do their work because of, for example, CI being unavailable.
Okay, cool. And yes.
And Eric, are you measuring that? How are you measuring that? Like you've got Splunk, you've got a little database you've got going.
Yeah, various sources. So I will be the first to admit that some things are also gut feel, see where we are with measurements, and that's also good, right? And some things are more based on hard numbers. So indeed, yeah, synthetic testing, making sure we get the nice availability numbers at the end of the year or at the end of the month to see where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then definitely what we also do from measurement, it is we want to contribute, have our team members contribute to open source. Because that's where our new partners are, that's where the community live. So that's what we try to measure, but they often do it on public recognition. They are on their own, actually. So what we try to do is link their GitHub identity together with the Sogeti identity, so that we know when they're making a contribution to an open source project, that we can start recognizing them, that we are helping. Yeah.
Do you promote it internally as well by, for example, having hour logging codes or whatever that people can spend company time on those contributions?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's something I discuss with management is that we are putting, let's say, KPIs in place. How much are you contributing to each other's project, to other projects, open source, inner source, and internal projects? And how much is what you build is used by others?
Yeah.
I really love those metrics. I discuss it with management. It requires some massaging there, requires some discussion, but we start to measure it at least already.
It's also a different school of thinking, right? That people are traditionally often thinking, hey, it's my IP, I want to keep it internally. But what I always like to stress is, if you want operational excellence, be lazy. So contribute it to open source, so there's more people contributing to it.
Yeah.
And you're not stuck with maintaining a fork, which happens at a lot of companies, that they fork something, take it closed source, and then keep maintaining it there. So at least to me, it really makes sense to always make the open source contribution, upstream it, and yeah, then just stick with the main line again.
Yeah. And for us, inner source is at this moment the most easiest to maintain.
Yeah.
And that's where I really promote people and I award people. I get some nice stickers from GitHub when they are making a nice contribution. I give them a sticker. Now we can travel again. That's how we are measuring it, actually. That's how we are awarding it. It's quite cool.
So people never change, right? It's like primary school all over again. You get a few stickers and you're happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's so nice to hear both of you wanting to encourage open source contribution from your company. I want to just go a little bit back to where we were. What were the first steps you took when transitioning to GitHub?
Yeah, I guess for us it was a greenfield project to start Backbase as a service, so it was quite easy. We just said, hey, we need something new. We don't want to use the traditional stack, so we went all in with GitHub at that point and with GitHub Actions. And I will be the first to admit that, especially during the start, I had a few times where I thought, hey, did I make the right choice? But I can say that 2.5 years down the line, I'm very confident I did make the right choice. But that's also what a partnership is about, and yeah, things aren't always 100% green, and that's fine.
Yeah, and from our side, we have some nice stories there, knowing that yet, let's say 12 years back, Git was not that common yet. There were other version control systems. I even still have experience with people who are using file systems as version control systems, just copy paste and change the version number behind it. Mm-hmm. Scary when you see that. So I need to start train people on Git first, and they were not quite understanding about the whole concepts of distributed version control systems. So that's what we started with, massaging that in. And then we started to use GitHub. For us, GitHub mainly focusing on the repos. Next one is on the actions. We are not using projects or issues. That's where many teams already have decisions made or listening or collaborating with customers, and they are using Jira or Azure boards or any other tool which integrates quite well. That's one requirement we put in place, that it needs to be integrated. But that's how we started with it, and we keep on evolving with it and
Awesome.
following what GitHub does there.
We will come back to the evolving and the integration part later on, because of course those are two things that I think everyone wants to hear about, how you're integrating other systems and how you're looking into the future. But this is the last historic question, I would say. How is your team organized right now, and what are their goals and responsibilities as of today?
Eric?
Yeah, sure. So what we see when we started out the Backbase as a service proposition, we started with one team, which is nice. As we're scaling it, we're really seeing some more diversification. So we have teams focusing on the platform layer, as I like to call it, which is more doing infrastructure as code. So these are people using Terraform to spin up environments on AWS, Azure, and maintaining that via GitHub Actions. But I also have a team really taking care of what we call the scalable CI solution, unifying the CI, where we actually create tooling around having self-service to use GitHub. So employees within our organization can use that to create their own repos, can use it to apply certain standards that we have within Backbase to the repos without having to get admin access on organizations. So we have a governed model there. And of course, we have a team working on reusable workflows, sample repos to adopt by teams so they can really start from day zero and they don't have to copy paste everything from Stack Overflow or from samples online, but they have a nice Backbase tailored snippet to start with.
And actually, the self-servicing part, that's what we are doing internally within Sogeti also. And actually, we are Sogeti doing it for the whole of Capgemini Group, and that's 340,000 people. It's crazy big. And then you can imagine that there are so many different stacks on it. We have the Microsoft stack with .NET, the Java stack with Spring, also Azure, GCP, AWS, you name it. It runs everything. And indeed, we also built a small self-servicing portal in front of it. So the team can, without having admin access, request access to other repos, request access to organizations, because we organized our GitHub Enterprise instance in different organizational units, where we also have one inner source organizations and one open source organizations. Everything below there is set onto private, because we say those are the customer projects, those are the internal projects. We set those on private, so that's organized at GitHub Enterprise level. And the GitHub organizations, which are the state of inner source, we set them at internal, so everybody immediately has access to that one. And then we have a few public ones where we have set it on public. And you can imagine that we configured all kinds of requirements on those kinds of repos. For example, dependable to switch on automatically. We are tracking that, and we are automating actually that they get notifications and that they are solving those dependency errors. On the public one, we are using GitHub Advanced Security, for example, and all those kinds of configurations we started to switch on for our teams, because it's such a widespread organization all around the group, and we really need to make it easy for them to do it the right way.
Yeah. So talking about easiness, how easy has it been to integrate with other systems within your business ecosystem? Because Clemens, for example, you were speaking about Jira. Could you tell us a bit how GitHub allows you to integrate with other systems?
For me, that's the cool thing about GitHub, because there are APIs around everywhere. What I mentioned, we build our own self-servicing portal. We build that on top of the APIs of GitHub. We are installing also a GitHub application into an organization, which can help and maintain and monitor all the stuff. So the integration capabilities of GitHub are phenomenal, actually. I really like it. With Azure DevOps, it's quite obvious. That works quite smooth. With Jira, no problem there. We only need to create a principal account for them, and then they can start working on it. And with all the GitHub actions, which can be deployed to any cloud provider, that's the easy part. That's I was surprised in how fast, for example, Google contributed to GitHub Actions, which provides a capability to deploy on GCP, the same way AWS did, to deploy that on their area. So integration is not the challenge for me there.
How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I think a similar story from our side as well. So we have a few things that we take from the marketplace, simply where we decided, hey, let's also stop using on-premise solutions of, for example, Sonar Cloud or Sonar Cube, and let's switch to the Sonar Cloud offering. So using a turnkey integration, so we once again don't have to manage it ourselves, following, I guess, the laziness principle, which I mentioned before already. Yeah, really easy to do these kind of things. And yeah, on the part of the APIs, yeah, I fully concur there. It's what you expect of a present-day solution, but GitHub has it, and we use it a lot. We actually use Terraform to configure all our organizations. We use Terraform to configure the self-service repos. So really leveraging concepts of desired state configuration with Terraform. And through pull requests, people can request new organizations to be added, or new repos to be added, or settings to be changed. So we have the right level of governance, which indeed makes sure that people cannot simply make a repo public or set something else they shouldn't be touching. But that way, by default, they get the nice repo rolled out with branch protection, any secrets needed, and then they're good to go.
So, Eric, I see we have a question in the public that actually touches a little bit about what you're discussing right now, which is the enforcing standards of coding, like the way you use branches, issues release, new dev, onboarding. I guess that's what this person is discussing. Like, how do you use GitHub to enforce these standards, or did you use something else?
Yeah, so we have a few things there, right? I think one of the things we are very keen about is enforcing branch protection. So that's one of the things we always set on repos that get set up. And in terms of pipelines, we like to follow the 70-30 principle. So 70% is predefined and is untouchable, and 30% is up to the team to change because they need to customize things. So you really see certain requirement elements like maybe container scanning being there. The part of publishing to a cluster might be fully locked down. But what happens in between, that's the freedom of the team. In terms of coding standards, yeah, we keep that quite local. So yes, there are standards, there are ideas that we think the code should adhere to. But if teams feel they should be exempt from a certain rule and they have a good reasoning for that, then be my guest. I mean, in the end, they are responsible for building and running their code. So yeah, in that sense, that's a possibility.
Yeah, same way for us. We are looking how they are using GitHub. When they are using the self-servicing portal, all that settings are made in the right way. Branch protection is set up. Dependables is switched on. All those kinds of stuff. They have the freedom to switch it off. But that's what our GitHub application does. They are looking if there is any repo which is not compliant with policies what we have created. And policies, for example, you have to switch on branch protection there. When they switch it off for some kind of reason, they get a notification. The notification has a link to the policy saying, okay, this is why we have this policy in place. We give, and that's what I like what we are doing there, just-in-time training. Hey, this is how you can do it, and then helping them. And when it is a important policy, for example, no customer code in there, or no customer names in your code, or no secrets in your code, then we are really start taking actions. We have some enforcement there. We have an escalation path just to have the discussions with all the people who are working there. and back when it is just a lightweight policy. We give the advice, we give the training and that kind of stuff. Nothing on coding standards. I'm looking into maybe start creating some CodeQL queries to analyze what they are doing, but that will be mainly for public contributions. When they are using Sogeti name or Capgemini name or brands and that kind of stuff, we need to be careful, and then we want to know that they are doing that.
It's interesting that we have a slightly different approach there, by the way, because for you it's really checking afterwards, whereas we have a bit more controlled approach that we really say you're not an admin, you don't even have the rights to change these settings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think both models work, and I think that also touches a bit upon the subject in the chat, talking about how to work in strongly regulated industries. I mean, for example, we work. Yeah, sorry, Carmen. This
You're perfect. Go for it.
Bread and butter. These kind of discussions.
I was about to say it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so what we see, we have a SOC 2 attestation, for example, where we definitely enforce controls around change management. We do it on the change manager for our infra, which also completely relies on GitHub and GitHub Actions. We follow a GitOps approach to deploy software. So you really see branch protection is key for us. And that's perfectly enforceable that way. And then on the backside, we also have a stopgap solution. So all the audit logs we get from GitHub are exported into our data lake. And from there, if something pops up that is out of policy, it will actually trigger an alert in the SIEM system for somebody to follow up saying, hey, somebody overrode branch protection, for example. And that really allows us to get that strong level of control needed for our industry.
Yeah, quite cool, actually. That's we definitely looking at those kinds of things. We have working so for widespread of organizations. When I would configure GitHub for a financial or regulated industry, I definitely would start recommending to switch on those kinds of enforcements and helping them creating it. Also, I don't know how you are using the identity. Do you have them connected to the identity store of your organization, or are you using their personal GitHub identities?
In about a month or 2 months from now, we should be switching to the enterprise managed users as well. It's been a long time coming, but we are now in the process of migrating that. It was one of the things very high on my wish list to say, hey, use your Azure AD credentials to sign on, and then you have your account provisioned straight away. So that will make it even better for us.
And then you want to use the GitHub AMU enterprise users one.
Yeah, exactly. And we use.
We won't do that for now because we are different kind of customers, different kinds of identities. We do have a link what we make between when they sign up for the self-servicing portal, we make the link between the GitHub identity and the Azure Active Directory so that we know who they are. We definitely have a single sign-on from our Active Directory, but they are still able to keep on doing open source contributions with the same identity. When you have single Active Directory AMU, I think the open source contributions are getting more difficult there.
Well, it becomes a different account. But in our sense, it was a trade-off between what is the extra control you have with onboarding, offboarding that way versus what is the ease of use or the tracking of contributions, where we really decided to say, hey, we'll sway one way instead of the other.
I get it. Definitely the example of the regulated industry and the widespread, what we need to have enabled for customers.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat about, it follows on from this. I'm seeing a lot of questions. People are very interested in the topic right now. Are you currently linking your users' private GitHub account to your companies?
I'm doing that. Yes, we are doing it. Yes, and they are free to choose if they're doing it. For sure, they can create, or employees can create 2 different GitHub identities. When they say one I'm using together with Sogeti, Capgemini, the other one I'm using for my personal contributions, where I'm working into the wild. But when they want to be recognized of open source contributions, they need to make that link. Otherwise, we don't know that they are doing it. It also gives us a mechanism when there are Capgemini IP leakage or credentials shared via public contributions, that we know who it is and that we can help them fix it. So that's how we do that linking. But they are completely free to not doing it. But our security team is continuously scanning GitHub actually. And they are looking for Sogeti and Capgemini contributions. And we do find once in a while some contribution where, for example, an interim created a public repo where they created a database where you see some credentials of that database into the repo. We need to help them. That's why we are starting that structure where we say we have open source GitHub organizations where we have every security feature configured. And when we are having interims, they can work on that location when they want to do it public. So we really can help them doing it the right way. Because IP leakage, security leakage, it's really important that we are staying away from that. Yeah.
And Eric, I'm guessing you're moving away from this.
It's very similar right now. What we have, people can choose to create a separate GitHub ID for Backbase. They can use their personal GitHub ID. The only requirement we have is that when people get added through self-service, it's indeed linked to a Backbase email address, so that we can actually track if the person leaves the company, that we have to remove that specific GitHub handle. Because some people might have their full name in GitHub, but some people might have their online names in there, and it's a bit harder to track who is who, which can give some funny situations every now and then, of course. But that's why we link it to the Backbase identity, and then we know what it is. In the future, for us, it will really be Backbase stuff will be behind the enterprise managed users, so a completely separate user, and contributions to open source can be done under their personal accounts.
Yeah. So before we move on to the open source topic, because I see there's a lot of interest in the chat about this, I do want to ask about the transition and how it affected your culture and values. So how did you make sure, because transitions are always very exciting, but at the same time, you both come from strong companies that have a certain mission and vision. So how did you make sure that during the transition you kept true to yourselves? I
think for us, Backbase is about just getting it done. So go ahead, make it happen. And this whole transition only made that even easier, because instead of being dependent on, let's say, customer infrastructure or coming at the customers and you don't know what's there, it actually, we now know what's there because we maintain it ourselves, and it's also the level of quality and the level of configuration we expect it to be. So in that sense, it only encouraged our values. We're also really about doing things together, and I think that's been made easier by this transition as well. I think that's it in a nutshell.
And for Sogeti, we really have a doing culture, a way of working. We really want to I always create value from technology. That's our mantra there. What we are putting in place to have the same way of working across every team is and you triggered me, Eric, with the laziness principle. We are having also a set of principles, so roughly 12 principles, where we say this is where you need to apply to. This is how we work. This is who we are. And the laziness principle I can put in there. Automate everything is a principle which is also in there, for example. Those principles apply to all teams, no matter what kind of tool or technology they are using. Because I've been working in many customer scenarios where they have different kinds of teams. They have embedded teams, integration teams, API teams, and then front-end teams, and all those kinds of teams are working together. They're using all kinds of different tools, all kinds of different platforms, but as long as they comply to those principles, they have the same mindset and the same direction. And what then happens that per technology stream, a team or a group of people start looking at those principles and say, oh, this is how we are implementing this for our technology. Because you can imagine it is different for SAP solutions as when you go full cloud native web applications, for example. Then those implementation of principles is definitely different. From there, we are selecting the tools.
I was about to say, thankfully, it's different from the old world that we have some modern stuff these days, right?
Lucky, yes. That makes it really fast. And what you started with, and making a DevOps team end-to-end responsible for a product or a service, that's definitely one thing you want to go move forward with. But Carmen, to answer your question, we stick to it, the transformation, we stick to the way of working via our principles. I call them our beautiful delivery principles.
And your teams are quite widespread throughout the world. How are you making sure? How does GitHub allow these teams to collaborate throughout the different time zones?
It is. I think that's where GitHub is made for. I had the explanation to many managers, sales, and other people within the organization that it is for developers not that challenging that everybody starts to work from home, because they are quite knowledgeable, quite experienced in working distributed, because they have the perfect distributed version control system already in place, and they are doing that for quite a while. And they are doing that via communication with the issues, with the pull requests, and that mechanism that floats quite smoothly, actually. So learning all those team members to do it that way, that's how you're doing it. Interesting there, I tried to start explaining it also to non-developers. Hey, this is how we are doing version control. This is how we do distributed working. Let's start doing more documentation as code and start putting in for delivery managers, some service catalogs, also in Git and those kinds of stuff. That's too technical for them.
The distributed is one thing, right? What I always love is the asynchronous working, and I think COVID has shown us only more that it's possible. That companies before were really traditional. Get everybody in the office from 9 to 5. You collaborate in the office, where people now say, hey, I want to walk my dog, or I want to do something during the day, and they'll just work in the morning. They might start a bit early or work in the evening. In that sense, yeah, we're quite flexible company as well, and we really see that the asynchronous model with pull requests, sending out a review request to somebody, that works for us, and people will get to it when they get to it. Sometimes it's more urgent. If it's more urgent, people will review it, of course, but otherwise, yeah, it might take a few hours till somebody wakes up or sees it. Oh, let me go through it, and yeah, that works really well for us.
And Eric, are you then also using the GitHub app, mobile app, to approve?
I am actually. Yeah, but it's more for myself because I'm still very much, I love hands-on. I love doing contributions. So every now and then I'm just clicking through a few pull requests to see what's going on, and that's what works for me. Sitting on the couch in the evening and just clicking through a few things.
Yeah. Same for me. Yeah. Don't have a dog, but I love scrolling. Okay, this is the pull request which came up lately, and then this is how everything works. So
still love engineering, right?
Yeah. Carmen, you disappeared.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happened. Can you hear me though?
Yeah. Oh, good.
Great. Let me fix my screen. I'm really sorry. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to open source now for a little bit. What are you? There was a question before about how are you guys controlling how open source is handled?
So we already had a quite long discussion on how we are doing open source, how we take care that the contributions our team members are making are secure, are conform the code of conduct within the organization. We are making that link between the Capgemini identity, Sogeti identity, and their personal GitHub handle. That is how we are supporting them. When a organization or business unit wants to open source a certain project, we have just a checklist for it. We are validating them. Okay, is there no IP in there from any customer or any project which don't want to get out of there? Is the project mature enough? And from the maturity of project, it's quite interesting. eagerly looking into do a pilot with scorecards, Google scorecards. They partner now with GitHub to show the maturity of a project, because at Sogeti, operational excellence and that kind of stuff is really important. So when we put something open source, it should be of high quality. And that's where I'm looking in those kinds of tools and techniques to start using to analyze if it is feasible and really good to make it an open source project there.
Nice. And do you publish it under a Sogeti organization as well, or people publish it under their own name?
Both, actually. We are now in the middle of the process is having a Sogeti open source organization where we are really promoting our own internal projects to be recognized. We have a organizational unit, Sogeti Labs. I always say that's where our biggest brains are. They are running very nice innovations, very nice projects, and they are all creating those projects on GitHub. And they are blogging about it. They are writing about it. It's really nice what they are doing, and that's what we are promoting there. But controlling the quality, controlling the security is quite important there. That's also what I see in the chat as one question. Do you have security champions among your different groups, among your different teams? And how do you control that? Within Sogeti, Capgemini, we have a separate security team, which is constantly measuring. That's our SOC, Secure Operating Center. They are looking into all Git repos. We are having our own team members which are secure savvy, and they are helping those teams to mature on that. Do you have there anything special, Eric, or?
It seems similar to our model. We also have a hub and spoke model. We really have a security hub with the experts, and the teams, they can actually borrow engineers to other value streams or teams that say, hey, can you take a look at this? And of course, they're doing regular scanning as well to see what's being published. And that's actually interesting, because if I take one step back to the open source model, there you really see a similar model on our side as well, where we have a Backbase organizations where we publish samples, where we publish small projects that we open source, but you also see the individual contributors from the Backbase side they're contributing to various open source projects because they made a change which they needed for a project, and then they upstream it back to the upstream project, following the laziness principle and contributing it back to the community.
Yeah, and then you also are accepting contributions from outside.
Yep, for sure. And that's really where you have to learn as well. So you have to have the right guidelines there. You have to really determine what is needed to make a good PR. And I think that's one of the key factors also to determine, hey, is something mature enough for open source, yes or no? I mean, how do you accept contributions? What are the requirements for making a contribution? If you don't do that, you will either not get contributions, or you will get contributions of such low quality that you probably don't want to accept them. And I think having those guidelines in place will definitely help.
Yeah. And that's also, I saw somewhere a question, how do you maintain it? And do you have some organizations around that? For our inner source projects, we have a specific group of maintainers, which are having weekly meetings where they start approving pull requests to our inner source library. They take care, it is all consistent, they take care of its right quality. But also when it is not going to be approved, they invite the contributor.
Yep.
And they are teaching and they are learning it. And so we are using that inner source model with the maintainers around it to mature and improve also our employees in doing those pull requests and those kinds of stuff.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting point you touched, because that's where I see where a lot of inner source models at least are failing, right? That if you don't have the right guidelines, people make a huge PR, they may have spent a week on it, and then the receiving team says, no, we don't want to implement it this way. Yeah, that's one guaranteed way of making sure you will never ever get a contribution again. So really promoting that open conversation. If it's a big change, that people actually ask up front, hey guys, how would you like to see this implemented? Is this the right line of thinking? Yeah, that really helps.
Is it conform the beautiful delivery principles or the laziness principle?
Yeah.
Carmen,
Well,
welcome back.
I don't know if I'm completely back. I don't know what's happened. My whole house dropped electricity. So I'm really sorry.
Okay, no problem, no problem. We still have questions in the chat when you want to.
I have the notes open as well, so we can continue with the next question.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, no worries. We want to talk a bit about which policies we had to adopt to promote a culture of sharing on the GitHub platform. Yeah, I think Clemens, maybe you want to touch on that because I think you have your 12 beautiful principles, which might be a nice lead for that.
Yes, definitely. So we are using GitHub from an inner source model, definitely to motivate our team collaboration and get that knowledge sharing in place, and really start improving all the practices of the teams. As I mentioned before, I'm cloud and DevOps. Cloud is evolving so fast, you can't have all the knowledge yourself. That is the goal, what I want to reach with inner source. One important item, what is around there, what is the product where you are looking at? And the product is for us a lot of automation around infrastructure as code, policies as code, pipelines as code, and that kind of stuff. What you touched around the 70-30 principle, 70% should come out of the standardized libraries, and the 30% can the teams make themselves. Then, and how we are helping those teams is, those are the policies actually what we put in place. We want to be as open as possible. We train our people continuously. What I always love to say, the full problem should be understood by the team. And that's where I'm really pushing towards too. That's also a cultural thing often, is how when as a senior you're explaining something, some people don't dare to ask, hey, I don't understand it. Can you elaborate on that? So that is how we are motivating and keeping the flywheel going, and having it open, having it, I love to say nerdy. I want to keep it as technology as possible. And then definitely around the policies, we have many policies in place. Those are mainly around security, IP leakage, branch protection, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, sounds similar on our side as well. And yeah, I really like to stress the lazy part to people and say, hey, why would you want to maintain this yourself? Upstream it, be done with it, get back to the main branch.
Yeah.
And you can stick to the release from then onwards.
Yeah,
I think that in general happens, that in general helps, and it increases happiness for people as well, right? And that they're no longer dependent on a different team to do something, but instead they can simply make the contribution themselves because they are dependent on it.
And that's I talked about that KPI. I want to have in place how much are you contributing to other projects, and how much are other projects using from what you are building. I really love that idea. It will be quite challenging to get it implemented, and making it a KPI is maybe not the best way. So that in a yearly review, we say, hey, how are your contributions? But I think it's a nice start there. It's
you have to learn as an organization, right? You have to improve, and that takes time, but that's fun as well.
Yeah. So I see one more question in the chat. How do you consolidate tools and scale as your teams and requirements grow?
It's an interesting one. I think that's very different for both you and me, because the nice part is we have a very standardized tech stack, right? We develop a product, and which makes this quite easy for me to standardize. Following the 70-30 principle, again, I can really say, hey, this 70%, it's locked, it's out of the box. You don't need to touch it, be lazy, just use it, and only mess around with the final 30% there. So that really allows us to scale. That also makes sure you don't need only gurus that know everything to do something, but a new joiner, maybe a meteor or a junior joining, can actually get started straight away. And yeah, because of the high level of standardization, we can do that. But I would assume that's for you, the level of standardization is a bit different.
It's completely different, but
Yeah.
I also have some nice horror stories from organizations who are just said to all their DevOps teams, and they had hundreds of DevOps teams saying, you are completely independent now, choose whatever you want.
Yeah.
And you can imagine it ended up in a chaos of all kinds of different testing frameworks and different platforms teams are using. Not optimized, not reusable, not maintainable. So bringing that consistency is quite important. We are definitely pushing towards inner source there. We have our libraries with all those cloud infrastructure as code, just to standardize in when they are creating a cloud infrastructure and not doing it from scratch. That's quite important. One on the standardization. Where I'm looking into is also standardize around DevOps tools there. The self-servicing capabilities are really nice, what we built on top of the APIs of GitHub. But definitely, when you have different technology streams, you need to have different DevOps tools. Some requires additional capabilities as other teams. And that's where I'm also looking into creating that as a full automation, actually. I call it a vending machine for DevOps teams. When they say, hey, I need to do a web app on top of AWS, which requires this regulator requirements, then they get their DevOps platform configured, they get their AWS landing zone, and that's also what you try to accomplishing, actually, is making them as productive as possible. And as I love to say, making the first pull request before lunch. All conform the right policies, all conform the right way of working. And that's where I'm looking into is the mantra of making it easy to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And automation is a mandatory there.
And I think that's also a nice lead up to a bit of a wrap up, because I see we have 3 minutes on the clock. Because I think this is one point where we share a lot of thoughts. So yeah, what kind of advice can we give, or what is the future vision on this, right? I think that 70-30%, I would say that is one of the most important parts, where you really allow software development teams to focus on software development and not on the boilerplate around it. I think that's one of the points we both covered. And yeah, making it fun, making it easy, allowing people to contribute there. Anything else I missed in the summary that you want to add?
I would say that the other thing, making it easy to do it the right way.
Yeah.
The policy should be baked in. Teams should get the advice the moment they are trying to do something wrong, or should get the training just in time at the moment that it is working there. And and then when evolving on these platforms, what I'm saying, the vending machine for DevOps teams, when they want to create this, just everything immediately in place, the first pull request before lunch. That's definitely the vision, and making it easy.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. I think we've reached the Q&A session. Do you want to take it from here, Carmen?
Yeah, I think, yes, I will try. I can't see anything, to be honest. I can only see your beautiful faces.
Okay.
So if I can't see the chat, I'm so sorry. And thank you so
worries.
much for your professionalism whilst something happened.
Okay, so we have 1.5 minutes left. Eric, what are the features you are not using yet, but really eager are starting to investigate from GitHub?
Yeah, so we've just dipped our toe in the water with the reusable workflows, and I think that's really one of the things where we will be expanding on a lot, and having internal actions for those things as well, really following the 70-30 principle. And yeah, I still think one of the hot topics these days is code spaces. We're not using it yet, but it's one of the things we are considering. Also following what you say, having your first PR out before lunch, people getting started, getting their onboarding done fast. So that's something we're considering.
It's definitely also something where we are looking at. The code spaces is really interesting. Our latest report is around secure enterprise DevOps environments. It's not that sexy title. I say hackers are shifting left too. It's much more interesting. Is how do you secure your developer environment? Because devices are now at home with maybe crappy networks, or at home is often better networks, but kids who are touching your machine is installing strange gaming software. How do you secure your developer environment, and how do you configure then your DevOps platform in the right way, and also your application platforms? That's on our latest report, and together with our security people, we are starting to investigate code cases to really bring that secure environment to our team members. Definitely still under investigation, but really interesting capabilities.
It's really interesting for BYOD as well, right? What we see as well, hiring specialists across the world, it takes long to ship a laptop there. It's a very cumbersome process. So if we can tackle something that way, high on my wish list, but not sure yet when it'll be adopted on our side.
Yeah. Okay, Carmen, I think we are close to the end.
I think we're at time, absolutely. So we've got a few little slides for everyone here. We would love to hear your opinion on how, if you enjoyed the event. Just again, my apologies. My laptop fried halfway through the session, so I had to find my own way of doing, but I think Eric and Clemens have given us so much to think about, and I hope you guys can go back to your teams and get some snippets and ideas of what's been going on. So if you scan the QR code, please leave us your comments and thoughts on the session. We're always trying to improve how to organize these and how we can give you meaningful content so that you guys learn and grow with us. To the next slide, Asina. Well, yeah, a big thank you to Eric and Clemens for being so interesting, so engaging, talking to each other and talking to you, being so professional during my, as Clemens was kind of saying, these things do happen, and they were both such professionals, so thank you so much. What we have coming up next is Maya and Bas. Maya is one of my direct colleagues, and Bas is a principal solutions engineer, both working in the Nordics, and they are going to be talking about what organizational efficiency means and how to get your business there. So for some of you that were talking about how Clemens and Eric and how Sogeti and Backbase got to where they are, what processes they had to, what policies they had to think of, this session will be the one that will be kind of going deeper into those questions that you had for us.
Looking forward.
Yeah, it'll be at 3 p.m. It starts at 3 p.m. CET.
Cool.
Athena, if you go to the next slide, please. Or did we skip the slide for the demo request?
That's the last one. Just the last one.
Okay. I'm not sure who's sharing, but there's a slide for the demo request for people to share the QR code. That's done?
There's done.
Great.
That's done. We're here. Let's close.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all so much, and we will see you soon. Again, thank you so much.
Great. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.